Hi Elf Allied race people, guess what? We've got a solution.
What you want to be is a fair-skinned, light blonde-haired, tall, majestic elf. Sorry, the Horde is there waiting for you.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. What a damn week. The beta's almost here, classes are almost done, and the expansion is apparently still morally grey somehow, and yep, GCDs, they've came up again. I've also escaped my green box and I've wandered into the living room to record a video. Very spooky. Let's talk about beta. Battle for Azeroth is in beta now. Many more of you have access, so I for one am looking forward to shorter queue times for the island explorations. But what does this actually mean? It's really simple. Blizzard think that right now they're at a state of polish such that a wider audience can see it. Essentially, all the zones are in. You're not randomly porting around the place. More of the UI is in, plus most of the new features are there. With Warfronts, of course, recently being tested, we've got 8 new dungeons, and we've got all of the zones. Along with all of this, we found out that the classes are pretty much done, bar a few outliers. I'm sure the forums are going to be thrilled about that one. Anyway, class design gets memed on a lot, but to be honest with you, I think that for the vast majority of actual players, things are in a pretty good spot. Plus, we're only just getting to test Azerite gear properly, and that's where all of this expansion's class customization is. Of course, with Blizzard confirming that pretty much all the changes are in, I think it's time for me to do a roundup video on the channel that's pretty much covering it all. Let's move on. Varrock Saurfang. I swear, this guy is the most interesting character in this expansion so far. Well, he just gets more and more fascinating with each build, but skip ahead a minute if you don't want spoilers. So, Blizzard changed his dialogue in the Stockades to confirm that he's leaving the Horde. Yup, Saurfang, he's now a free agent. From what I can tell, most players are far more aligned with him ideologically than Sylvanas, and it seems like Sylvanas is a great faction leader for the Forsaken, but as a war chief, I think Blizzard are struggling to sell her. Now, Ian hopped onto this in a bit of a confusing way. I mean, a really confusing way, because what he said is really baffling to anyone who's been paying attention at all. Now, the beta is covering the opening gambit of the war, so it's focused on who started the damn thing. He said that we should worry about both of our factions doing bad things. Sure, but there's no alliance examples of that. And they've just had a character who represents the core, honorable values of Thrall's new Horde leave them in disgust. Ian talks about Bane Bloodhoof and the Tauren being very different to the Forsaken as factions, and that's so true. But Bane seems to have went along with some really dark stuff. So I think one of two things is happening. Sylvanas is either a bit of a patsy, or they are depending on context that's going to be in the book, and I really hope it's the former. So much of, as an example, Jaina exists in the books that players thought that she just was a crazy emo character, even though she made sense with the books. So here's the deal. I think Sylvanas is a great character. She's really well motivated and really well established. Right now, they just need to do a little bit more to get her to fit in. Do you know what actually would fix this problem? Gen Greymane. Just have him take some really drastic action against the Horde as a whole, doing something that's really severe and properly allows the Horde actions to be a little bit more justified. On similarly beta-related stuff, I just want to talk about some of the structure. So there's a whole bunch of small things have happened, right? There are art maps, the UI, a lot more of that's added. Everything right now on BfA is just feeling that little bit more cohesive. The expansion really is taking form. So that's definitely nice to see, and I think soon enough we're going to be able to give a pretty good broad appraisal of it. Alright, here we go. It's global cooldown time. I know you're all quivering with excitement to talk about this topic, but well, Ian talked about it for a good 20 minutes during the Q&A. Here's the lowdown. They think that their changes are for the good of the long-term health of World of Warcraft as we move on years into the future, and they know that there's going to be pushback from players from this. That said, some abilities are being taken off the GCD again, so Infernal Strike's off, Disengage is off, and Heroic Leap is off. I'm very happy about all those. They'll be removed in an upcoming build. That's definitely good, and there are some of the changes that worried me the most. Overall, though, they want to double down on the skill element of WoW being the decision-making, and I think a little bit less the reaction time stuff. So by limiting the number of options per unit time that you can make, what that does is it makes every option a bit more important, and choosing the right one will be the mark of a good player instead of just doing both because they're off the GCD. Much of it comes down to, I think, what the core identity of WoW combat is, and that's such a strange topic because World of Warcraft is, it's fun in a way that most games aren't fun. It has to have this deep, mentally satisfying sort of combat, and it can't get away with awesome animations carrying the day or epic set pieces because of the setup of World of Warcraft. the gameplay of WoW really has diverged from the rest of gaming to the point where it really is such a unique case that it's just forked off. Now, putting offensive buffs in the GCD, honestly, I think it's fine for most classes. It's not completely massive for most of them, like, say, WW, but Fury Warriors, they've been a bit worried. Ian did say that Fury is going to see a change to Avatar, so I think that'll be good news there, hopefully. He did say that overall they are going to be tweaking the classes to account for this stuff, and that this is not a change that's being made in isolation. For me, I think it just comes down to, I agree with the reasoning and all of that. I just come to a different conclusion as I covered in this week's video. One thing is for sure though, the bizarre Final Fantasy comparisons, they're just not apt. Both WoW and Final Fantasy have a global cooldown. The only difference is that the Final Fantasy one is a baseline second longer. So that's a side thing to the debate, and it's an easy meme to throw around, but it's not exactly helpful. All right, artifact power in BfA. So this was covered in the Q&A, and it's going to be quite different to Legion's, thankfully. I dodged most of Legion's problems personally, because guess what? I stopped caring about gear, and I stopped caring about the progression systems. But I understand that if you cared about those things, it got pretty painful after your 50th Maw triple chest run. Well, in Battle for Azeroth, the largest source of artifact power is going to be island explorations. Every week you'll have a few bounties that give a whole bunch of AP, and after that you can continue to grind them out, but it's not going to be as efficient, so there'll be fun, fast rewards to grab every week, and further repeatable content if you really want to go sort of hard at it. And I think this is great. I love the island expeditions, first of all, and I think that the core of this here for me is that the AP grind is being shifted onto something that is repeatable by design. So the expeditions, they feel different every time, and they are far more replayable than grinding out world quest after world quest after world quest, most of which are just repeats of leveling quests. So overall, I think this is great for the vast majority of players, and it should lead to a more varied endgame, which is great. Let's talk about armor. Ian confirmed that each raid will have a visual set for each armor type, and that's down from one for every class. The difference here is that they plan on adding more sets of gear across the game in terms of the visuals, overall giving us more variation to play with. He said that basically, like, here's the deal. We've seen 20 takes of Mage Cloth. Well, let's try doing Old God Cloth, Titan Cloth, etc. So that's their direction. A larger amount of gear that better reflects the place that the gear comes from. And honestly, I'm completely fine with this. Let's be real, each new tier is kind of mixed at best with the class-based gear, so to me this seems like a pretty good direction. Now let's talk about how you're going to get this gear. It's going to be personal loot, no matter what. Master loot, it's dead, and they are sticking to it. Here's the lowdown on that. Personal loot is already default for most of World of Warcraft. Actually, really everything bar grouped raiding, right? A lot of Ian's core point is that players will feel more in control of the loot that they get, so if a boss drops something, well, it's just yours. You don't have to go through a loot council for it. Now, Ian reconfirmed that this is not being done to hurt, say, split runs. This really is their design intent for personal loot to be baseline across the whole game because of the inherent merits that Blizzard sees in it. Now, that does kind of make sense. After all, the split runners, they can still exploit personal loot, just through a different method. And as for my take on this, I get what Blizzard want to do, but I don't see any point in doing it. Why not just let players decide, okay? I think that sometimes designers can overreach in the hopes of finally crafting the perfect experience every time. The problem is that much of the charm of a game is found in the texture, not the polish. And that texture is the social interactions like things, say, loot councils, and a group of players coming together to decide how to best use the spoils of war. That's, I think, a core part of the fantasy of raiding with your friends in any role-playing game, even systems such as Dungeons & Dragons. I don't see the harm in leaving it in as an option. So yeah, I just have to disagree with Blizzard in this one. Okay, PvP. I'm going to talk about PvP, but trust me, this is a good one. Don't switch off. I know PvP's not massive, but trust me, this is good. So they're implementing something I've wanted for years, a queue for epic battlegrounds and a queue for regular battlegrounds. What's an epic battleground? Well, it's Alterac Valley and Isle of Conquest. Strand of the Ancients may have been there, but, well, this happened. And good riddance. As much as it had a cool fantasy, not great. I like this change a lot, though, and I wish that they would just add to it by working in more maps for existing game modes and giving us game mode-based playlists. As for the Epic Battleground playlist, I'm not going to play it because I don't really like those, but Blizzard did say that Tolbrad, Wintergrasp, and Ashran could all work it in there. They would pretty much rework the function of those to work as battlegrounds, which I think would be a pretty great move. That said, Ashran is actually being retired for now, but the overall thing here is if you want to have some small group, super tactical PvP, well, you can queue up for a regular battleground, and if you want a big bash, then you can go for an epic battleground. And let's talk about PvP gear, because I think this is going to be important to a lot more people in this expansion than it was in the last one. So you've got a conquest bar to fill every week, and filling that bar gets you a new bit of gear, and that's in a fixed order. So week 1 could be hands, week 2 could be shoulders, and the final week, that could be a weapon. If you miss a week, then you'll have catch-up and some sort of acceleration to get you back up to speed, which seems to be a little bit like the Mists of Pandaria Conquest catch-up system. Now, they are doing this instead of a vendor because they think it's a smoother experience. And remember what I said earlier about game designers overstepping sometimes? Yeah, that's what I think's going on here. So, sure, it might have been the case that back in the day you typically purchased PvP gear in a certain order, but that was back when PvE gear could not be used for PvP because it didn't have player versus player resilience. So if I get some gloves from a dungeon, and then the first week of the conquest progression gives me gloves, that's going to feel rubbish. So look, Blizzard, I like what you're doing with this. Just put it in a bloody vendor and give us currency. I think that if a player's behavior feels too over-designed, I think players will pick up on that. They'll disengage in the system because the hand of the designer will be so transparent. That said, this is a big improvement over Legion, absolutely, and I like the idea of moving up higher tiers of PvP and gear rewards as a sort of continuous thing. So that pretty much is a big thumbs up. So that's pretty much it for what's been going on this week. It's been a pretty damn good one, Battle for Azeroth being a beta now. That's mighty interesting. We really are getting close, and as I said, yeah, soon I'll be able to just give a broad appraisal. So now that we really know this, now that we're in beta, a lot of my personal goals is I'm going to be looking at professions, looking at multitudes of classes, all in sort of a roundup video to get you like the top 10 or, the largest class changes you need to know about. There's just like broad overview videos, how the war campaign works, how the mission tables work. There's a lot of stuff now that I feel a good bit more confident that I can cover on the channel. And another thing, yeah, I'm not in a green box. So behind me is actually where I normally write videos in my house. And yeah, I basically, for this kind of news recap thing, which I anticipate doing maybe 3 times a month, depending on the news. I don't want to just put one up for the sake of it. Yeah, this I think is going to be out here. Why? Well, I think it makes it a lot easier to make a better quality video. And if I know this is something that I can have sort of penned into the schedule, it means I can put a lot more time into the writing and all of that stuff for the more creatively sort of draining, difficult videos that ultimately I think are the most interesting ones, like the big documentary videos, the retrospectives, the lore deep dives, all of that stuff. So yeah, this is very much version, you know what, I'm not even going to call it version 1. This is version 0.1. Over time it will evolve and get better, so bear with me, and any feedback would be awesome. But there you go, that is it for your weekly World of Warcraft update. Maybe I'll have a name for this at some stage. So yeah, thank you very much for watching this video. A tremendous thank you to everyone over on Patreon. Over on the Patreon you will get blogs, behind the scenes, vlogs, early access to non-news type videos, and a bunch of other stuff. So check out the Patreon in the link down below. Tremendous thank you to those guys, and yeah, thank you to you for watching this video, and I will see you next time.